No, I haven't.
No, hi, how's it going? What's your
Good.
name?
Mohammed.
Mohammed.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a very original name.
No, no, yeah. How are
Your
you?
parents are like, oh, what would we call him? Oh, we'll have to go with Mohammed.
Yeah, we were just talking about the earliest records of Islam.
All right,
So
okay,
it's kind
that's
of-
my
it's kind of
thing.
an
Yeah,
area.
yeah.
So,
Okay, then I'll speak to him.
Have you an interest in that kind of area? Like,
I'm actually currently doing a series on the preservation of the Quran from its inception until today.
all right, yeah, that's not an area I have much of an interest in. I'm sort of more interested in like things like inscriptions and coins and things like that.
Okay.
Have you any sort of
Not
interest?
so much
Have you
into
ever-
inscriptions.
But maybe even just a general kind of awareness.
I'm aware of them,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
haven't studied them as a
Yeah.
as a field.
Yeah, yeah.
Because for me, I'm a Muslim because I believe in where the religion originated.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
provide evidence for where the religion originated, and when we have individuals like Daniel, who go against our traditional narrative, I ask for the evidence. Why do you think? Critique it. That's all.
yeah.
That's all fine.
So can
but where does it
yeah.
originate from? It's
So
not from-
can I ask you? This would be like an open and shut thing.
yeah.
Can you point me to any inscription to do with Muhammad, specifically the Muhammad of Islam, from the 7th century?
Well, inscriptions on like rocks and
Yeah, on
archaeolo-
rocks, yeah. Because I've been trying for the last 9 years to find just one. And I'll just tell you why it's interesting that there isn't one. Because like down in Yemen and in Arabia, there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands
Yes.
of inscriptions.
Yes, that's
People
true.
record. It's almost like a baptism. Record everything that happens in their lives. You know,
No.
so and so's born. So and so died.
There are many inscriptions.
Yeah.
There are
But
inscriptions
why
of the
is Muhammad not mentioned?
There is inscriptions of the Quran in Saudi that date back to the late 7th century, if I'm not
Okay, late
mistaken.
7th. But
yeah,
But why not mention? Why is there no mention of Muhammad though? Like, surely that would be like a big deal. Like, you know, like.
he's been taught by in the masses. Okay, so sometimes these inscriptions aren't inscriptions to record teachings and whatnot.
Yeah.
Some for whatever reason, people would inscribe things like we even do today. We inscribe something on a tree or on a rock. Muhammad was here.
But why isn't there a Muhammad was here though?
Well, Rasulullah was illiterate, isn't it? So he wouldn't inscribe anything.
But why didn't someone say, I was with Muhammad
Yeah, but
here?
that is not an open shut thing to say, oh well, it's Muhammad, peace be upon him, didn't originate in the 7th century. What are you trying to
It's
get
true.
at?
No, it's absolutely, and you're totally valid.
Yeah.
But do you not think it's a little bit odd though?
No.
Like the most famous person in history, let's say,
No.
for you would be the most famous person, and no one is inspired in the first 70 or 80 years to write his name down anywhere. You don't
Oh
find
no,
that a bit strange?
who said his name wasn't written down anywhere?
But I'm saying it because I haven't. If I'm sure, if it had been, there'd be loads of Muslims here who'd be saying, "Hey, look at this inscription."
No. There's a difference between inscriptions on the rocks and things that we look at archaeologically and our books and traditions and stuff.
Yeah, but a lot
Those
of
are
that's
the stuff.
centuries later. Like,
That's fine. What is your evidence for them coming centuries later?
well,
Because that's the discussion I'm having with
Oh, right,
Daniel.
yeah.
What is the evidence that our tradition, and specifically what tradition, the Quran or the Sunnah?
well, you can pick either one of those.
All right, let's start off with the Quran because that's our primary source.
Okay.
Okay. What is your evidence for? Would you believe the Quran was? I wouldn't say authored by the Prophet, peace be upon him, or was that the Quran originated in the 7th century?
But the burden of proof is on you to show me how it is from the 7th century, because
No,
like, I don't you're asking me to prove a negative, but
No.
the burden of proof is on how do you know it's from the 7th century? That's what I would ask.
No.
You know?
You're critiquing my position, okay?
Yeah.
I have a position, you're critiquing my position. Therefore, the burden of proof is on you because you are establishing the argument.
The scholars basically point to the Quran from Sana. Okay. And you ask, and it's all very woolly, right? You could ask 100 scholars who are experts in the Quran, who critically assess the Quran. You ask one set of them, say, oh, we think it's from this decade. Another one says, no, it's actually from the year 700. Another one says it's 750. So based on the evidence, they cannot even establish when it was written. And the carbon dating, which is the famous one that everyone tries to use, Stephen Shoemaker says that actually carbon dating can only roughly give you give or take 100 years, which is not specific enough.
We know that.
You know that?
I know that, but that's not an evidence, this is more conjecture. When we talk about, we have a claim. The Quran was first revealed in the year 610. Okay, the first 5 verses are in the of chapter 96. From there is 23 years of revelation.
These are all claims. There's not evidence, but
I'm talking about the tradition. Okay, now our tradition can be substantiated historically. Okay, now we have this tradition, and it is mentioned.
Can I just interject if you don't mind?
Sure.
You claim I haven't seen any.
That's fine. We'll get to that. And our tradition mentions that the Quran was written in the lifetime of the Prophet, peace be upon him, on tree leaves, barks, bone and whatnot. Okay, but also memorized by the people. Okay, that is our tradition. Now, when historians come and say this tradition doesn't make sense, it's not reliable, what is the evidence for it not being reliable, and what is the alternative, and what is the evidence of the alternative?
Well, I would respond the idea that this really important book was written on scraps of this, that, and the other is very odd, considering in the 7th century, for example, there were Jews that were well capable of writing down their accounts of what they called their Makmed, like Nehemiah bin Huziel, who conquered Jerusalem. They had no problem writing that down. So how come the Arabs were not able to do what the Jews were able to do at the same time?
Okay, first and foremost, the Arabs were largely illiterate.
Again, that's a claim. You'll have to prove that, because there's hundreds of thousands of inscriptions all over Arabia that disprove your case.
Does that, if you find many inscriptions, does that necessitate that the majority are literate?
No.
Right.
You're saying they're illiterate.
So
there's enough evidence. You actually admitted earlier on that there were inscriptions. You earlier on as well. You already admitted that there were inscriptions. So you can't have it both ways. Either there was illiteracy, 100% illiteracy, or there was some form of literacy. It doesn't have to be 100%, but there were certainly enough Arabs able to read and write for it to be written down.
Well, hence why we have the scribes of the Prophet, because they were literate, right?
Okay.
Right.
So why didn't they write it on parchment, which would have been
Parchment was available, we know this, but it was also a very expensive material, okay? Now,
doesn't seem like you don't mind me...
Yeah, no. Let's have a.
If something was that important, like this is, for you, this is the religion, this is the revelation. I would say if this happened in where I'm from, we would find 100 goats to get that material, and we would put all our money into it.
There would be nothing more important.
That wouldn't be more important to write it down. I don't find that very plausible.
Is that why Christianity? Is that why the Gospels were written down on papyri? Why not on parchment? Then?
We didn't have an empire at the time. Islam had an empire.
We didn't. What, during the lifetime of the Prophet, peace be upon him?
You're going on bougie raids.
No.
You had loads of money.
No. We're talking about the Muslims largely, okay, that initially followed Islam were poor people, okay, could not afford, all right? The richest among them were the likes of Abu Bakr, okay? Now, parchment was expensive, but also there were many scribes of the Prophet, peace be upon him, okay? And we know them all by name, okay, as well as their lives and everything. So when you talk about history, historical information, we know much more than just some blokes wrote something down, okay?
Yeah, I mean, we still have to establish, as to those biographies, when they came into existence, and
that's fine. That's not a problem.
Do you mind if I just cut to the chase? When did they eventually write it down on vellum, on parchment that would last? Do you know when roughly? They
the reign of Abu Bakr.
Abu Bakr. So that's in the early years. So do we have that copy anywhere?
No, we don't.
So that's like a claim without any evidence.
No, we know that Abu Bakr put it in between two covers, okay?
How do we know?
From our history. And so this is mentioned within our tariq, in our tariq, okay?
And what year was that written in?
So it doesn't give a specific year, but most would estimate it within 6 months of the Prophet, peace be upon himself. So because it's shortly after the Battle of Yamama. Okay? So the Battle of Yamama occurred shortly after the Prophet's demise, alayhi salam, and then after that it was when it was commissioned.
Okay. I'm trying to follow your line of logic. So you're saying that Abu Bakr wrote it down on vellum. A few minutes ago you said they were too poor to afford vellum, like traditionally a few years before.
No. So during the lifetime of the Prophet, peace be upon him, there were many scribes of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Most of them, okay, weren't wealthy individuals. Abu Bakr was a wealthy individual, okay, and some others. But largely,
was he
however,
not alive at the time of Muhammad though?
he was. But
So how come he
I tell you
had
why.
the money
I tell you
2
why.
years before,
Because
and then after Muhammad died, suddenly became
No.
built to afford. He
It's
could have,
not.
2 years before he could have said,
Hold on.
"Hey, I can afford this."
Right.
Muhammad conquered the whole
See, the
of
thing
Mecca
is-
during his own lifetime.
Yeah.
They could
Hold on a
afford some
second.
value.
Hold on a
I
second.
think so.
Hold on a
Goats
second.
wouldn't have been too expensive.
We also know that Abu Bakr used all of his wealth. He gave away all of his wealth in the cause of Islam.
But why not for
Okay,
the parchments?
because
That would
I tell
be
you why.
probably the number one priority.
I tell you why. Because the Quran is memorized. It is meant to be memorized. The writing material is a secondary form of preservation for us.
Unfortunately,
If we did not have, if we didn't know,
Yeah,
look,
but-
we're trying to
but-
establish. We're trying to establish the tradition. Okay, you're asking me about my tradition. Okay, now what I asked you was why you didn't, why you reject our tradition.
Well, for the reasons that you're just giving me, because it's a very what's the word? It's your argumentation's going all over.
No,
the
it's
shop.
not. It's not going all over the
You
shop.
contradict yourself because you
How did I? Okay, how did I contradict myself when I said the Muslims were largely illiterate, but there are literate among them, which is why we have scribes of the Prophet, peace be upon him. They wrote on on bark and on all sorts of material. Many of them were poor. Some of them were wealthy. Abu Bakr specifically, he was a very wealthy man, but he gave all of his money for the sake of Islam. And the reason why they didn't prioritize the finances on writing material is because the Quran is supposed to be memorized. What of those 9 points actually contradict each other?
Okay, so one of the points that you said earlier on is we couldn't afford the vellum because there wasn't enough money for it, and then moments later you said Abu Bakr was wealthy. Okay, that's the first point.
No. Where's the contradiction? Because it doesn't. Because I mentioned the third point that Abu Bakr gave away all of his money for the sake of Islam. This is mentioned.
Yeah, well, surely that's your priority is to get it written down. That would, surely.
Why is that? Okay. Why is it not our priority? Because I already mentioned our priority was the memorization of the Quran. The Quran is meant to be memorized.
But then it no longer. That no longer is an available proof for anyone living today, because because then that's hearsay, you know.
According to your traditions, you had Zayd
ibn Thabit who memorized the Quran.
who wrote
Another
down
claim.
the Quran.
He wrote it down, but he was also a memorizer.
Yeah, and you have Waraka who also wrote down
Who?
Waraka wrote down the gospel, right? So
Not all of it.
You have multiple people who were supposedly writing the Quran during the lifetime of Muhammad.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
But you have to also remember as well, the Quran was revealed piecemeal. So it's not like they could have sat down and be like, no. Because what is the nature of the revelation of the Quran as well? Was it revealed from Surah Al-Fatiha to Surah Al-Nas? No. It was revealed Surah Al-Alaq, then Surah Al-Mudaththir, then Surah Al-Muzammil, then Surah this, then Surah that. And then it was...
by the time of Muhammad's death.
Yes, but then it was also ordered, so it was constantly shifting. So you had chapter 96 that was revealed, then chapter 73, right? And then it had to be ordered, right?
Okay.
So it was impossible to sit
Right.
down and just write it on a single piece of
Yeah.
paper.
Let's grant
That's
you.
another layer. to it.
Okay, I'm going to grant you, even though I don't believe it, but I'm going to grant you that Abu Bakr wrote it on a parchment, right? Is that fair? I'll grant you that. How come it wasn't preserved? Why can't we find this manuscript? Like, surely that would be the first one should have been kept, because that would have been like today you could have full confidence this is actually from the time.
No, because
We
even today
we don't like it easy. We like to make it
No,
complicated.
because even today, when we have those who print the Quran in the factories,
Yeah.
do you know how the text of the Quran? Do you know how it comes to be today?
I didn't hear that. Sorry.
Sorry.
Say it again.
How the text of the Quran
How does the text of the Quran today come to be in the pages that we have? So if I open an Arabic Quran today, how does that come to be in my hands today?
You tell me. You tell me.
Right. You have the calligraphers, right? Because obviously it's all calligraphy. They would write it, right? So it's not printed. It's not on the computers. It's written by hand. Okay. Every single letter and dot and tashkil and everything. It's all written by hand. Then it is sent to who? A memorizer. The memorizers then check it. So it's actually the text is fact-checked by those who memorize.
Can I
the
ask you a question just on that
And then
before we?
it's
Yeah. Okay. Do you have 100% confidence in the memorizers?
Yes.
Okay. Were there ever variants in the written text, whether it be
Yes.
vowelization?
Yes.
So how come the memorizers didn't pull them up on that then?
Because it depends, like today, are you talking about today or back then?
Back then.
Right. Back then, with regards to the Ottomanic Rasm, okay, there were 4 copies sent out to the empire.
Okay.
The reason 4 copies and not 1 copy is because there were differences in the skeletal text to allow for the different readings.
You're talking about differences in skeleton text. That's actually quite a big difference. Not just. So you're not just talking about vocalization. You're not.
Yeah.
You're saying not only in terms of pronunciation, you're actually saying there's actually a fundamental difference between those 4. So if one person read one, they would get a different meaning to the second one, the third one, the fourth one,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So which one is the correct one then?
All of them.
All of them?
Yeah.
So if I told you 4 different stories, are these stories the same?
No, not 4 different stories.
No,
With
but I'm
regards
just
to-
using as a parallel.
Yeah, but that's not a parallel. That's
Okay,
one.
go on. Okay, fair
so
enough.
for example, I'll give the most famous example
Yeah.
in chapter 1.
Yeah.
We have Malik and Melik. Okay,
Yeah.
that is the difference in the text and the meaning. Okay, now Malik means owner. Melik means king.
Right.
All right. Now, if one person, if he's reading king and you're reading owner,
Yeah.
yes, you'll get in different meanings, but they are complementary because Allah is the king of the heavens and the earth, and He is the owner of the heavens and the earth. So the meanings, the differences in meanings in the readings of the text, which originate from the Prophet peace be upon him,
Yeah.
and taught to the companions, they are complementary.
Yeah.
That's how it works. Now, the majority of the variances are differences in dialect, have no bearing on the meaning, but there are certain words where they have bearing on the meaning, as well as the text, as well as the form of the text.
Can I respond just a little bit? So let's grant you the 4, okay? It doesn't mean I believe it. I'm just going to grant for the sake of talking.
we're
Okay.
having a discussion.
Okay. So we got 4, and and I like the idea of having extra nuance and meaning to it and so forth. So by that stage, after the 4, that's it, because the revelation has stopped. No one can add to the meaning of that text, right?
Now,
Just a yes or no. Can they add to it or not?
quite. It's a bit more nuanced than that, even.
Okay, all right.
So, that's the thing. Yeah. So the
It's
history of the
yeah.
Quran is very.
So just to point out, if there's any extra meaning, it's from human agency, not by divine agency, right?
No. It's all by divine agency. All of it's by divine agency.
So Muhammad isn't the final prophet
Hold
then?
on. Let me explain.
Are they prophets as well?
Let me explain. Okay. Now, within these 4, because if we look at the 4 texts,
Yeah.
the 4 manuscripts of Prophet,
Yeah.
then we might say, people might think, oh well, then there should only be 4 copies that are spread throughout the world, but it's not the case. There's 10.
But now we've gone from 4 to 10.
I know that, but there's 10 that we read today, right? There used to be 40.
Hey, I mean, we still did talk about 33, 37.
There
Right?
used to be more than 40. There used to be 40, right? Because there is a book called.
Depends who you ask. Like,
No. This is established
Doesn't-
within our own Quran.
Doesn't sound very
This is-
convincing, but
yeah,
you
I
know.
mean, Yasser Qadi argues 25.
I don't care about
Some
you.
people
I don't
say
care about
I
Yasser.
know, you love him
I
so much.
don't
I
care
know,
about
I know.
Holds in the narrative.
I'm not an authority on the Quran.
I mean, some people say up to 350. I don't even.
No.
I think that's too many.
No.
Well,
There is a book, I can't remember, but it mentions about Al-Qira'at al-Ashr wal-Arba'in al-Za'ida. Okay? This is a book that establishes that there was 50 qira'at at one point in history. Today we read 10, okay? 10 qira'at. So the 10 qira'at, how did they come from the 4 manuscripts, the 4 sahaf? Because none of these sahaf had the diacritical marks. Because even though the skeletal text, there was differences in skeletal text, it still accompanied all the readings that the Prophet peace be upon him taught. So that even though, like for example, we could take one manuscript went to Asham, to the region of Syria, the Levant.
Yeah. No.
Those people would have been reading it according to that skeletal text, according to their teachers, that was transmitted back from.
Can I ask you just a very basic question? Okay. The diacritical marks, when did they get introduced? Like in terms of century? What century would they introduce?
Introduced into the Quran?
Or just in general?
In general, in the 7th century.
In the 7th century?
In the 7th century they were used.
Okay, and if I were to go and research that, I would get. Where would I go to confirm that as a fact? Like, because I know there are inscriptions, and I know there are inscriptions in the 7th century that don't have diacritical marks.
Because the Arabs don't need that. Okay. diacritical marks were a thing, but they were largely not used. Okay, and we know this because even I can't remember the quote specifically. Because it was mentioned that there were diacritical marks prior to the Uthmanic Mus'haf, but Uthman chose to leave them off to accommodate the readings. Now, some people talk about Abu al-Aswad and him introducing this in the reign of Ali. That is not true.
But do you not think not having diacritical marks would have introduced ambiguity, especially when one of the arguments that Islam has is that corruption entered the scriptures, right?
Agreed.
And the last thing Islam needs is corruption entering because of a lack of like 100%. This is what the text says. But if you don't have diacritical marks and you don't even have vocalization yet, that gives you a lot of scope for like variations.
No, true. Hold on, let me just suggest. That is 100% true if you are relying upon the text. The text is not what we rely upon. You have to understand the basis of the text was to establish what? For those who are coming into Islam from outside of the Arabian Peninsula. Because now what the issue was for Uthman was, first and foremost, those who are coming into Islam and learning the Quran, they started to hear different recitations. So they started to argue, right? And even come to blows, right? Regarding the recitation of the Quran. So Uthman was informed of this and he standardized the text and sent them out into the 4 regions of the empire at the time, Medina, Kufa, Basra and Sham. And he gave them that and said, look, this is the text of the Quran. And those who would recite the Quran will be reciting based on this, okay? And they will teach it. And we know that there were other recitations because in our history it records other recitations and we even know about them. Okay, we don't recite today.
Yeah, and not only that, and I know you will agree with me at this point, but I want to bring this into the conversation.
Go on.
You know that there were recitations which were recited that you do not recite today, and you recognize them as being inauthentic falsifications.
I agree, yes.
That were introduced and were recited as Quran at that time because they didn't know any better. But you're convinced that there aren't any of these around anymore, even though it used to be the case for Muslims.
No. So in terms of it, look, when we talk about the corruption of the Quran, okay, that would have to mean that something that is not from the Prophet peace be upon him entering into the recitation or the text and being transmitted, okay, and for us to be taking that as canon, that would be corruption because we find within the manuscripts, okay, and we know about Brubaker's work.
And you would say that has happened with the exception that you have later identified them and you no longer recite them.
No. That's not true.
If you saw, sorry to cut across you, but if you saw differences in the skeletal text between, say, one Quran and another, would that count as corruption for you?
No.
So what does?
If it's something that is not revealed by the Prophet peace be upon him.
How would you identify that?
Because we have the chains of transmissions of the Quran, so it's been taught, mass transmitted, okay, across the world. So anything that is outside of that and cannot be traced back to the Prophet peace be upon him is false.
So how would someone like me verify any of this? Like, because I'll just be honest with you. Most people would say that
this
you
is
can
why we
see
have an extensive literature about ulum al-Quran.
Yeah, but so most people would say that corruption in a text is fairly easy to identify. The letters, the words are different from one text to another. Not how I think most people would say.
The thing is, for a Muslim, what we see as being differences in the text, somebody must have made a mistake. They invent a tradition and say that it all came from Muhammad.
Whoa. Invent a tradition, establish that. That's the thing. You have to establish the invention of the tradition.
See, this is the point. Your material comes later to explain what comes before.
No.
But you know that the Quran precedes the Hadith tradition.
No, they come at the same time.
Orally, but in terms of writing down,
our tradition is an oral tradition primarily. The written stuff, the written Hadith, the written Quran, we do not need it.
I'm going to go. I haven't heard anything plausible, but thank you for discussing with me. Thank you.